So let's start with an introduction. The OpenAI API can be applied to virtually any task. We offer a range of models with different capabilities and price points, as well as the ability to fine-tune custom models. So what does this mean? The OpenAI API can be applied to virtually any task. It means that this is a tool or a technology that you can take and interpret in your own way, depending on your own use case and your own environment and the needs and the problems around you. You can actually come and find any use case or any interesting thing that you want. You can make it, write poetry, come up with a recipe. You can use it to do scientific research. You can use it to create new designs. So virtually any task can be used for this OpenAI API. And the fact that this is technology that is now accessible for you and for me to explore and to use in our own applications is mind-blowing. So they offer a range of models with different capabilities, and this is the important thing. They offer a range of models, meaning you have different types of like ranges of models. They were trained in different times. Some of them are faster than others, and they have also different capabilities, as you can see here on the side, which we might also go through, and also price points, because they don't offer this for free. You usually have to pay for the OpenAI API, but it is very, very cheap, and it is extremely worth it. They offer, they essentially give you the same technology that they're using to build ChatGPT, which is incredible, that they allow you to just essentially use it the way you want to do. So as well as the ability to fine-tune custom models. So fine-tuning means that you're now able to, if you have an even more specific use case and you have your own custom data, it's possible to use that to create an even more custom model. So they just don't provide standard models. You can actually take these models and modify them for your own use cases, which is very, very incredible. It's awesome. So if you wanted to start working with the OpenAI API, you'd probably want to start by experimenting in the playground. So this is a UI that you can use to essentially help you to come up with ideas, essentially, figure out, what is this API capable of? What does it do? And then now you can read the API reference, which is for now when you're ready to start developing or to start using it yourself in some way in your own stuff. They also have some other stuff you can check out. Now let's check out some key concepts of this introduction part. So they have text generation models. So OpenAI's text generation models, often referred to as generative pre-trained transformers, or GPT models for short, like GPT-4 and GPT 3.5, have been trained to understand natural and formal language. Models like GPT-4 allows text outputs in response to their inputs. The inputs to these models are also referred to as prompts. Designing a prompt is essentially how you program a model like GPT-4, usually by providing instructions or some examples of how to successfully complete a task. Models like GPT-4 can be used across a great variety of tasks, including code generation, summarization, conversation, creative writing, and more. So what does this mean? OpenAI's text generation models are GPTs. So that is where the word GPT comes from this generative pre-trained transformer. So now we've reached GPT-4, and there's also the older one, GPT 3.5, and they have been trained to understand natural and formal language. So they have taken all this data from the internet and trained these models to, and fed essentially it into the model, and the model has retained a representation of this data that can be used to reproduce things like text and language. So models like GPT-4 allow text outputs in response to their inputs. So here we're just talking about text characters in and text characters out, like GPT-4. The inputs to these models are also referred to as prompts. So designing a prompt is essentially how you program a model like the GPT-4. So this is a very interesting statement because it talks about the next level of programming, or even how it looks at GPT-4 or some of these models as a form of computer. And for you to ask this computer to perform work on your behalf, and for you to program it, you essentially just tell it what to do in natural language. So as much as it sounds a prompt and program sounds like fancy terms, it's essentially you telling the computer in natural language what you want it to do, and the computer naturally doing that based on understanding the context and just understanding natural language. Before we had to use more structured programming languages, like you have to write actual code like Java, JavaScript, Dart, things like that. And there's still a space for that, for actually writing code. I mean, it'll become much easier for anyone to do it, but in terms of the technical stack, it relies on code in order to convert the high level instructions ultimately into things that can run on a computer. But GPT-4 is a new type of a computer that allows you to just use it by saying what you want it to do. So you provide these instructions on how to successfully complete a task, and then these models like GPT-4 can be used across a great variety of tasks, including content or code generation, summarization, conversation, creative writing, and more. This is the important part. So if you're thinking of starting a business or you're thinking of ideas, models like GPT-4 can be used across a great variety of tasks. So they can solve many, many problems that you might have in your business, and they have opened up many new opportunities that were not available before for you. So you can use these APIs to generate code. You can use them to summarize things. You can use them to, chatbots. You can use them to write new books. And it's not just the idea of starting a new business. You can also use them to solve your own problems. Like if you wanted to write a book, you can now actually write. You can use these APIs to do the same thing, or come up with an automated way to do something that was very manual before. So that's the text generation model. Now let's talk about assistance. So, so text generation models were the first initial models, but OpenAI has now um, combined these large language models and adding a few more things. So you add them, like you take the core of this text generation model and you combine it with a few more things to create something that is, much more interesting. So assistants refer to entities, which in the case of OpenAI API are powered by large language models like GPT-4 that are capable of performing tasks for users. So it's very interesting that they're calling them entities. They don't want us to think about these assistants as, like it's interesting that they're calling them entities and not agents. In some cases, Sam Altman has I don't want to call them creatures, but in the very advanced stage, assistants are tending towards the idea that you can have a human-like or at human capability level entity that is able to perform tasks on your behalf. And an assistants API is the beginning of that. So these assistants operate based on the instructions embedded within the context window of the model. So these assistants operate based on the instructions embedded within the context window of the model. So it means that essentially the text that you give it is what it is going to do. That's what it's saying. So they also usually have access to tools which allows the assistants to perform more complex tasks like running code or retrieving information from a file. So apart from being able to perform, how does it perform tasks on your behalf? It has tools that allow us to retrieve information from a file. Like, it's a form of memory. It has a tool that can help it do mathematics. It has a tool that can help it, maybe it can connect to external APIs. And it uses this kind of logic that you've written in your context window, essentially what you tell it to do to operate. And in some cases, also, it autonomously knows which tools to use. In some cases, it can decide for itself. Apart from that, they also provide embeddings. So an embedding is a vector representation of a piece of data, some text, that is meant to preserve aspects of its content and its meaning. So it essentially means that if you take a piece of text, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe, or ABCD, you want to represent it in a different form and while still preserving some aspects of its content and its meaning. So you just want to represent it in a different format, but still maintain what the underlying data represents. Chunks of data that are similar in some way will tend to have embeddings that are closer than unrelated data. So it's a way of also trying to figure out which data is similar to other data. So you first of all convert it into a vector, into this idea of a vector where you maybe you take your text and then you convert it maybe into some numbers. And once you have these numbers, it's the way you converted it into the embedding tends to end up in such a way that data that is similar. So cats and dogs would be similar, would be closer together in this vector space than maybe cats and trees, and that's how it works. So then you're able now to explore the closeness of different ideas using a computer because you've been able to convert it into a format that a computer can understand. So OpenAI offers text embedding models that take as input a text string and produce an output, an embedding vector. So you essentially give it your, they want to make this process easy for developers. So they give you different models where you just say, I want to convert this text into a string that the computer can understand, and then sorry, into a bunch of numbers called vectors, and then it produces that output. So they're useful for search, clustering, recommendations, anomaly detection, classifications, and more. So if you have a use case where you need to do any of this stuff, you might want to check out the embeddings. Then now let's talk about the idea of tokens. So, text generation and embeddings models process text in chunks called tokens. Tokens represent commonly occurring sequences of characters. For example, the string tokenization is decomposed as token and ization, while a short and common word like there is represented as a single token. So this is the idea that when you want to, for example, you want to use these embeddings. How do you do that? You first of all break down the words that you're given into a bunch of chunks, which are smaller chunks. You want to essentially come up with sort of an alphabet based on the small chunks of words, and that can be a single token for, so for example. So they also allow you to test specific strings and see how they're translated into tokens. And roughly one token is approximately 4 characters, or three-quarter words for English text. One limitation to keep in mind is that for a text generation model, the prompt and the generated output combined must be no more than the model's maximum context length. For embeddings models, the input must be shorter than the. Okay, some more stuff here about tokens. So as you can see, we've just gone through the introduction of the OpenAI API. You can see there's even more features now available in the Assistance API. These are some very powerful ideas. And if you're interested in starting with the OpenAI API, you want to check out, first of all, the playground.